Now, it's low tier time. You know, I think I enjoy doing these more than their top tier video counterparts. When a character is considered the best, or second or third from the top, it's usually a pretty cut and dry case of them just being strong as fuck. A low tier, though, can be considered such because they're genuinely horrendous, or because they're just not as overtuned as other characters. That's why it's fun to talk about this kind of stuff to me, so let's get right back into doing just that. I want to preface that you shouldn't let a character's perceived viability get in the way of playing them. Most of the time, the best thing to do is just play the character that you like. Most games, you can get away with that and still have a good time and still do well. That said, let's get started. Something I always enjoy when it comes to characters who are present in multiple fighting games is peeping how strong they are across different titles. It's always fun to see a character who is considered consistently strong in many games, and if they happen to have any weaker incarnations. An example of this I looked at was Cammy, a character considered very strong in many games who had humble beginnings. This time, though, let's take a dive into Fatal Fury: City of the Wolves. Hokutomaru's been one of the strongest characters in this game basically since launch. In a game that hasn't exactly been praised for its balance, Hoku stands out for his strong feint pressure, his different air options that make his jumps extremely tricky to deal with, and his adaptable game plan. He's a super solid character, to say nothing about the annoying stuff in his kit like his rev blow and teleport. It's nice for him to get the time of day from SNK, cause his first appearance wasn't exactly fantastic to say the least. Before he was a boy, he was a rat. Hokutomaru in Garou Mark of the Wolves still has a lot of the tools that make him so strong in its successor, but he's also lacking in many ways. Hoku's specialties lie in his varied, tricky movement and being really annoying. He's the only character in the roster capable of performing a double jump, which he can use to make his approaches more unpredictable. Considering he has a lot of strong jump-ins that can hit cross-up, including Jump B, which is insanely fast and very ambiguous in where it hits, Hoku being in the air can be much harder to deal with than it looks. He's also one of a handful of characters with the ability to perform an air throw. Having an air grab might sound like a pretty mundane strength, but because of Mark of the Wolves' system mechanics, it's stronger than it sounds. It's your primary answer to people attempting to air JD. Just Defend, JD for short, is done by tapping a direction against an attack within a certain window, either back or down depending on if it's a mid or a low, which can be done on the ground and in the air. It's a powerful mechanic. A successful JD heals you and builds more meter and causes you to recover faster than you would simply blocking an attack. On top of that, doing the input for a special or super right after a JD will perform that move as a guard cancel, allowing for attacks that are normally safe to be punished. Since Garou does not have air blocking, Just Defend is your main way to defend yourself in the air, and because of the nature of the input, there are lots of really strong JD option selects, many of which will let you do a jump that can result in a JD on the ground and in the air as soon as you jump. One of the main ways to call people out for JDing is grabbing, and since Hoku has an air grab, he can catch people doing this in the air too. Anti-airs aren't always super reliable in Garou, since there's a good chance a button anti-air will just get JD'd. In that situation, you get no damage. In fact, the healing basically results in the opposite, and the opponent builds meter. Same goes for air-to-airing with a button. Air grab though, and you'll take them right out of the skies for trying that shit. There are also Air JD option selects that can result in an Air Grab or Air JD, which is super helpful for Hoku. Something interesting about Hoku's buttons is that just about every one of them has a target combo he can go into, many of which are special cancelable. This gives him some very easy, very consistent hit confirms into 214A for a quick meterless combo. The damage is nothing special, but it's certainly very convenient. His air buttons also have target combos into each other, letting him pressure with double overheads off of his jump-ins, a luxury he certainly enjoys, especially against taller characters. He can also use these air TCs for option selects, such as jump 2C into JB, which OSs between his air grab or a cancel into his amazing JB. That's why you see Hoku players buffering that input a lot. As far as buttons that stand out, the main one is his Close 5D, an absolute unit of a button. It's tied with Jump B for his fastest normal, both being 3 frames, and it's an amazing tool for combos. Hoku can feint cancel this and it dramatically improves the frame advantage on block and hit. Close 5D can already naturally combo into his specials, and with feint canceling it's plus enough to link into itself. close 5D feint into another dash up close 5D can be looped, theoretically an infinite amount of times, although the timing needed to actually do Hoku's feint cancel close 5D infinite is difficult to the point of impracticality. Hoku players typically will just do 2 or 3 close 5Ds linked into each other, which is still serviceable and leads to his best damage in the corner, since you can make use of his 236B/D break. Breaks will cut the animation of a special move short, usually leading to a juggle. In Hoku's case, you can break 236B/D, usually D since it does slightly more damage, and then get a juggle with 3D into an ender. This is his primary corner B&B, and it nets solid damage. The 236B/D break is also plus on block for some nice pressure. He has a slide done with 3B, which is very useful for him thanks to the fact that it lowers his already small hurt box. The crazy low profile not only makes it annoying to deal with in neutral, but it's also a capable anti-air and an answer to projectiles, like Kind's Orb Super. Anything that gives the finger to that monstrosity is a win in my book. His run animation also lowers his hurt box, and he has good run speed to boot. Combine these two and he gets the ability to threaten punishes on whiffs or bad jumps with a combo, which is quite strong for him. Special-wise, Hoku's working with some interesting tools. 236A throws a single shuriken while 236C throws 3. This special can also be done in the air, although both versions of Air Shuriken only throw a single projectile. Projectile zoning is not that strong for most characters in Garou, since most fireballs are just giving people free JDs, and even worse for Hoku is that you can straight up destroy his shurikens by hitting them. Still, they're not bad as a ranged option. The air version actually has less recovery, since it can be done very low to the ground off of a jump, so it's the preferred version for Hoku to use. You can also cancel his backdash into a shuriken. Backdashes in Garou are fully invincible, and Hoku's travels quite far, so BDC shurikens are a solid and annoying way for him to retreat. Hoku's teleport is notorious for being a very irritating pressure reset and neutral tool in City of the Wolves, so how does it fare here? Hoku is notably able to perform it off of a back jump in this game, something he can only do with EX teleport in City of the Wolves. The B teleport pops him a fixed distance into the air, but since he can't attack afterwards until he lands, using this is kinda just asking to be punished. The D teleport has him do an actual attack. This is mainly used as a combo ender for his 236D break corner routes, since he can cancel 3D into it. As a neutral tool, well, I can say from experience, it's very annoying, because he can do it at any point during his jumps. If you're not prepared, it can be a bit of a jump scare, particularly if done from a back jump, since the teleport always moves him forward. These points are irrelevant in the face of the fact that even when doing that, it's still reactable and highly punishable on block. Now, regarding the fact he's considered low tier, Hoku has quite a few issues. His game plan relies heavily on his aerial prowess, and that is mainly a consequence of the fact that he's not particularly great when it comes to the ground game. Hoku has a severe issue with the range of his ground normals. A lot of them are super stubby. Even close 5D, for how good it is, suffers from requiring him to be so close just to use it. He has a 2C with pretty good range, and it is plus on block, but it's not special cancelable, so not much reward off of landing it. Most of his specials are slow and unsafe, so they're risky to just throw out, and not super rewarding to boot. Being reliant on his air approach isn't the worst thing ever. People are going to jump a lot in Garou, it's just part of the game. Unfortunately, even though his target combos and double jump do help bolster his air presence, the latter has a particularly big issue that makes it not as strong as you'd think, which is that Hokutomaru cannot just defend after doing it. If he double jumps, he forfeits his main defensive option in the air. It's risky to use this as an approach option because Hoku is vulnerable if the opponent manages to chase him during the double jump. In fact, it's one of the select few situations in the game where something can be consistently anti-aired since there's no threat of Hoku JDing. This especially sucks because Hoku is also squishy. He's one of 3 characters to have a lower defense modifier, so he takes more damage, and he also suffers more guard crush damage on block, so any risks that don't pay off hurt worse for him than anyone else, besides Janae and Hotaru, who both also have low defense. He doesn't have any reversals besides his supers, and his guard cancel options are limited outside of 236B's break. I should mention his supers aren't half bad on their own merits. The Shuriken Super is a great ender for his target combos as it connects very consistently from them and it also blows through other projectiles. His other super is nice as a combo ender, but while the vertical nature of the super would have you believe it's a solid guard cancel and reversal, there are times where a character hit by the top of the super's hitbox can drop out of it after just a few hits. Now, despite his mediocre and risky approach options, he does have pretty good damage on a solid hit, especially with this close 5D as a starter. Thing is, this is the same game where Kevin exists. What I mean is that in comparison to the rest of the cast, particularly the top 6 or so, they all tend to have not only equal or better damage, but better neutral and offense that lends itself more to situations where they can net that damage. Hoku's neutral is just inadequate, a consequence of his buttons having poor range and all his other approaching options like the teleport carrying such risk. The combination of relatively weak neutral and poor defense is a tough hill to overcome, and it results in very difficult matchups for him to get over. Still, he's not unusable, just has to work harder than most, but you'd be surprised how successful this character's actually been competitively in spite of that. Proof if nothing else that being annoying is a strength in its own right. I didn't mention that, did I? This character is annoying. I'm always in admiration of Blazblue's roster for just how many cool gameplay niches they managed to hit. Just about any kind of mechanical quirk you could ask for is covered in that game thanks to the drive mechanic. Stocks, stances, puppets, level ups, and even charge inputs, the most obscure fighting game gimmick of all. It all makes for an extremely entertaining game, but today I'd like to talk about a character regarded as rather weak, with a drive that's always intrigued me ever since the first time I played Centralfiction against friends. This nonchalant-looking fella is Terumi, and he's usually chilling near the bottom in tier lists. The gimmick that his kit revolves around is meter. More specifically, it revolves around building a ton of it, and I do mean a ton. Generally, drive gimmicks are centralized to the D button for each character. Every one of Terumi's D normals will generate meter if they connect, on hit or on block, and it's a lot of meter. 5D builds 15 meter, 2D builds 24, 6D builds a whopping 30. Hitting with these moves is insanely rewarding in terms of meter gain. The meter build on block is also quite good, much better than non-D normals. It should be noted that in combos, the amount of drive that Terumi builds from landing his D normals does scale based on how many D normals he's actually landed in the combo. Still, D buttons are an important part of his combo theory for generating as much heat as possible. With his overdrives, Terumi's meter build goes from really good to downright absurd. Overdrives are character-specific installs. Everyone has one, and it usually enhances the power of a drive's effects. Terumi's OD not only enhances his D normals with stronger properties like higher damage, better knockdowns and hitboxes, or higher untech time, but the meter gain also goes up, and gets an upgrade to straight meter stealing. OD 6D builds almost 50 meter in one go, for reference. So Terumi builds meter like a fiend, but what exactly does he spend it on? Well, first and foremost, Terumi has a lot of supers, and is uniquely able to cancel his specials into said supers. The merits of some of these supers make them strong on their own. Gleaming Fang is a fast, far-traveling super that's projectile invincible and leads to a combo on raw hit, while also causing a fatal counter on counter hit. Fatal counters are a stronger counter hit effect that offer more hit stun and untech time if a certain move counter hits, so Gleaming Fang is a strong zoning callout. His main reversal is Divine Twin Blades, which is fast and invincible from frames 1 to 10. He has a dumb super, Serpent's Laceration. I don't mean dumb as in broken, I mean there are two animations for this super. This is the A version. This is the B version. One of these hits low and one of them hits overhead, and both have the exact same startup speed. Terumi cannot combo off A Laceration normally, so it's not a super rewarding mix-up without extra meter for a rapid cancel, but there's something appreciably stupid about it regardless. B Laceration is still useful for combo extensions in the corner after the wall splat it causes. These are all very strong supers, and once again, they only get better when Terumi pops his overdrive. Not only do they also get enhanced properties, but Terumi also gains the ability to cancel his supers into each other. Ordinarily, using his supers, or anything that requires heat, inflicts a meter build penalty known as heat gauge cooldown, where meter gain is decreased by a significant amount. Terumi completely disregards this penalty when in OD, allowing him to maintain his accelerated heat accumulation even after using a super or RC, and this is where Serpent's Curse Sting comes in. The super costs 50 heat to activate like the others, but if you have more than that, it'll consume all of that as well, dealing extra damage corresponding to the excess. At 100 meter, the maximum you can hold in CF, this super's damage is off the charts, and it allows for crazy double super combos in OD that do huge amounts of damage. We're talking an easy 5k plus. Gleaming Fang giving a combo afterward is also hugely beneficial when taking the lack of heat gain penalty in OD into account, so there's a lot of ways to spend all this cash for massive damage. Supers aren't the only way to use heat offensively. Terumi's infinite meter stream also means he gets tons of rapid cancels. RCs are basically this game's Roman cancel, and having such common access to them is really good for our green-haired friend. A lot of his tools that don't normally offer combos, such as the A version of Serpent's Laceration, 6C, and 214C, can convert into a combo with an RC. The latter is a 19-frame, safe-on-block overhead, and with 50 heat you get a full conversion off of it. Terumi's 5C also has some use for mix when RC'd. The first hit causes him to hop into the air and can be RC'd afterward to leave him in the air and very close to the ground, where he can either do an overhead with his fast jump A, or land and do 2B, which is a low. It's also possible to rapid cancel Divine Twin Blades, which makes it safe on block. You probably already guessed it, but this surplus of meter is undeniably his biggest draw. His damage output and the impunity with which he can use his supers as well as RCs makes him quite threatening on offense. Conversely, that ends up fueling many of his biggest problems. Terumi's kit is pretty honest, to a fault. Neutral-wise, he suffers from generally stubby buttons on the ground, and while his fast dash speed can make up for this somewhat, it doesn't do a whole lot to offset that. Other than 5D, there's not a whole lot he can leverage. There is 6C, which has more range than even 5D, but it's unsafe on block without an RC, and it has pretty abysmal recovery. Not to mention, it lacks the ability to get rid of projectiles like 5D can. Some of his air buttons have beefy range, to be fair. Jump C and Jump D are his main ways of approaching off of super jumps or IADs. Jump D's range is huge, and the hitbox is disjointed. W. However, it's slow. 20 frame startup means it's at higher risk of being anti-aired if done too close to the opponent. It is head attribute, so it loses cleanly to anything with invul against that particular attribute. Jump C doesn't have as much range on any of its 3 hits, but it is faster to compensate. So many characters in this game have ways to enhance their neutral. Projectiles, active or passive hazards they can set down like Rachel rods, stuff like that. Terumi's neutral is mostly hinging on his buttons and mobility, ultimately making him subpar in this area. He's definitely much stronger when he's on offense. His pressure is solid. In fact, it's better than solid. 5A and 5B are both fast, chainable lights and both 0 on block, although 2A is usually preferred as a pressure tool since 5A whips on crouchers, other than Tager and Hakuman. From there, he's got a plus on block 5B, a jump cancelable 2C, some fast lows with 2B and 6C, as well as many ways to reset his pressure for plus frames. The one you'll see Terumi players often do is jump 2D. It does not need to be blocked high, but if done close to the ground, it's plus on block. Cancelled out of 2C or the first hit of 5C, Terumi can steal his turn back quite easily. 2D also grants plus frames on block, and it pulls the opponent towards him, but unfortunately the startup is monumentally slow. 6B is an interesting normal. It's also plus on block, but with 24 frame startup. However, it's invincible to throw and foot attribute attacks, so depending on what the opponent uses as a barre, it can blow them up for pressing on defense. This is a fatal starter, so combos starting with this will shred health if he has resources to spend. The majority of 2As and 2Bs, as well as some 2Cs, are foot attributes, but not every character uses these buttons on defense, so how useful it is can vary from matchup to matchup. If you hold the button during 6B, Terumi will perform the dash forward but not the kick. This is mainly used to set up mix-ups with his grab. Despite how good his pressure is, Terumi's actual high-low mix-ups are pretty linear and he usually needs RCs to convert out of them. I know that doesn't sound like a particularly big issue for a character who builds meter so easily, but if he happens to be without meter, the effectiveness of these options is hilariously lacking. Finally, his Oki is weak when it comes to covering multiple wake-up options, and his defense is exceptionally poor. No meterless reversal, the second lowest health in the game, a counter-assault based on his 6A, which results in it whiffing against many grounded normals due to 6A's high-up hitbox. Without his precious heat, he's got barrier, and not much else. Despite his damage and offense being as good as they are, his neutral and defense just don't cut it most of the time. With how fucked up offense can be for so many characters in this game, Terumi's is relatively tame in comparison, and it leaves him generally outclassed and regarded as bottom 3, sometimes straight up bottom 1. Terumi is still more than usable though. If you just want to stomp fools and do a ton of supers, he's great for that and has a ton of appealing tools at the helm. Can't go wrong with a character that does a fuck ton of damage. Capcom vs SNK 2 has a few low tiers I could dive into. It would be pretty easy to explain why Kyosuke or Dan or Benimaru or Haomaru are considered on the weaker side. So let's skip the easy stuff and change things up a bit. Instead of talking about a low tier character, I'd like to talk about a low tier groove. Indeed, before you set your team order, before you assign ratios, before you even pick a single character, CVS2 demands you select one of 6 grooves: CAP, SNK. All 6 of these grooves bring something different to the table and can radically change your team building process. Generally, the weakest of the 6 is agreed to be S groove, but there are many videos out there explaining why that is, and at this point you probably already know at least vaguely what S groove is about and why it's considered not as strong. So I'd like to instead talk about P groove. P groove is really only seen as being stronger than S, and all the others outclass it, so let's talk about why. First though, it's important to establish what the grooves in this game actually change. They don't modify the kits of the characters for the most part. Across all 6 grooves, buttons, specials, supers, and basically everything else remains the same. What does change though are the options available for mobility, offense, and defense. For basically the entire roster, the CAP grooves have a Street Fighter style forward dash, while the SNK grooves are fitted with the ability to flat out run, which is usually considered superior to the dashes, but it can vary from character to character. It's not like the CAP forward dashes are completely terrible. It's obviously not enough to stop A groove from being as dangerous as it is. Immediately, one of the biggest problems with P groove should be evident. In fact, it's practically staring you in the face. P groove's meter situation is crazy, and not in a good way. That big ass stick of butter is all you have access to in P groove. Most of the strongest grooves have multiple segments of meter. C groove has 3 sections, so you can build up to at least a level 1 fairly quickly, which makes C groove very reliable when it comes to having supers. A groove has 2 segments, so even when the bar is halfway full, you can begin to enforce the threat of a custom combo. N groove, you get 3 sections, and just one section lets you pop max mode for increased damage without even needing to confirm into a super. On top of that, being in max mode turns your super into a level 3, so as long as you have a second bar, you basically get those at a discount. P groove, despite being inspired by a game where meter length can vary wildly based on character and super art choice, gives every character a single, long bar. It takes forever and a half to reach max bar. Granted, you can fill it up by parrying attacks in addition to all the other ways you gain bar, like whiffing or landing attacks and getting hit, but it fills up very slowly. And as a result of this, you spend a lot of time without a super. Sometimes entire rounds can go by without being able to use one. This effectively kneecaps your damage for much of the round, which is really bad when one of the main strengths of parries is the punishes they enable. If your character needs meter to deal good damage, P groove is a major handicap for them. Even once they do finally build up to a full meter, they get 1 super and then you're reset back to 0. Your team building is very restricted in P groove because characters who fit best in the middle and anchor slots often work well in these positions by being able to utilize meter efficiently. In P groove, you can't really do that. Even if your character builds a full bar, once it's gone, it just takes way too long to build back. Now, to P groove's credit, supers done in this groove are always level 3s and do huge damage. The output doesn't really compensate for the lack of accessibility, which results in P groove being outpaced in damage by other grooves a lot of the time. P, along with the 3 SNK grooves, have the ability to perform a short hop. It's a really good tool for pressure and mix since you can do jump normals super close to the ground, though it does tend to synergize better with other grooves, N and K in particular. A fairly low-key tool in P groove's kit is tactical recovery. When waking up, if you hold all 3 punch buttons, you can delay your wake up by 15 frames. Nothing extravagant, but it can mess with the opponent's Oki timing. But okay, P groove's defining mechanic is its namesake. You play P groove for the parries, and they work similarly to how they do in Street Fighter 3. Tap forward or down depending on the attack, within a certain window of an attack connecting, and you'll parry it, resulting in a blue flash and a brief screen freeze. A lot of the advantages parrying presented in SF3 are maintained in CVS2. It's a strong way to negate fireballs, and it also makes anti-airing P characters much harder. With almost every other groove, it's a simple thing to just anti-air a jump in, but doing that against P groove is setting yourself up to have your DP or button parried and get punished. Very annoying. Funnily enough, parry also happens to be a great anti-air in of itself. After a successful parry, you can punish most attacks during the screen freeze, even those that are meant to be safe, so parry callouts are very powerful on defense and even offense. On top of that, parrying also negates pushback and chip damage, allowing you to escape chip kill setups. Being able to use parry effectively can be the deciding factor in winning or losing, and in some ways, that's what sucks about the groove. Is it a little messed up that a groove centralized around one of the most infamously powerful defensive mechanics in an FG is actually kind of underwhelming? Some of the limitations of parrying itself are what cripple the groove's effectiveness. In SF3, there's a mechanic that allows you to begin parrying while in block stun. It was added in Third Strike, and the ability to parry multi-hit moves even if you blocked the initial hit is a godsend in that game. This mechanic is not present in CVS2, so if you fail a parry on a multi-hit move and get forced into block stun, you gotta hold that. Problem is, you won't always be able to hold it. P-Groove has another problem that synergizes with this lack of red parry in a way that's almost comical. CVS2 has a guard bar, pretty standard mechanic that's present in a lot of SNK games. Block too much, the bar goes down, and when it's fully empty you get guard crushed and open up to a full combo. Every character has the same guard bar duration, but how much damage it can take changes based on the groove. P-Groove has the worst durability on its guard bar of any of the 6. Add these two together and you get some miserable matchups, especially with A-Groove. Custom combos on block shred through a P-Groover's guard bar, and there's no red parry to offset that, which is weird since most of the other grooves have some kind of guard cancel they can use to escape these guard crush scenarios. CVS2 parries are not dissimilar to the ones in Third Strike. Much of the frame data for the window to parry is the same and the effects are similar, but the thing is, in Third Strike, parrying was completely universal and every character had it, so the game revolved around it as the primary defensive system. CVS2 has 5 other grooves, and most of them have defensive techniques that match and even surpass parrying's utility. C, A, and N groove have access to rolling. Rolls are good on their own, but what really makes them amazing is that they enable the use of roll cancelling, which is a bug that allows the startup of a roll to be cancelled into a special move. Doing this will transfer a roll's strike and projectile invincibility to that special, basically meaning you can make any special of your choice invincible to anything but grabs. Despite how tricky they can be to perform, roll cancelling is highly game defining, and there are numerous applications for it and many characters who benefit tremendously from it, way more than parries. K-Groove does not have access to rolls, but still has strong defense thanks to the presence of Just Defends. Hey, I just talked about those. They work identically to how they did in Garou Mark of the Wolves, and while they are similar to parries in some way, they also carry less risk. You tap back to do Just Defend, so failing one just means you block an attack. Now, JDs don't offer the same frame advantage that parries do when an attack is successfully neutralized, so punishes aren't always guaranteed. Even if they aren't as rewarding as parries in terms of punishes, Just Defending still heals and grants meter, which does a fine job of compensating. K and P Groove actually have a fairly similar meter at first glance, one big bar that gives you access to a level 3 super when it's full. K-Groove actually prevents characters from gaining meter by landing hits, and even though that sounds like the catalyst for similar meter problems to P-Groove, K-Groove has much better reward for reaching a full bar. Unlike P-Groove, where a full-length bar only gives you a single use of one super, maxing out K-Groove's meter puts you in rage mode. In this state, you have boosted damage on all attacks and buffed defense, much more lucrative prizes for reaching full meter than P-Groove gets. Even though both grooves have one long, non-segmented bar, K-Groove's is technically shorter. K is 72 units long. P is 192 units, so K-Groove's meter fills up much faster. Despite its flaws, P-Groove is far from terrible. It's not even that bad. Parrying is still amazing, and proper use of it can make P-Groove look extremely strong. Make the right reads and it can feel impossible to even do anything, but parrying is also the only thing this groove has on the others, and it's not really enough. Ultimately, all the other grooves besides S have defensive options that can match the utility of parrying, and P-Groove's abysmal meter build and low guard gauge are the nail in the coffin. It's still better than S-Groove though, for what it's worth. Interestingly, P-Groove did end up receiving buffs in another version of the game. CVS2 EO was a port of the game initially released on GameCube and Xbox, and featured, among many things, balance adjustments, for the cast and for the grooves too. P-Groove in particular was given a pretty neat change in EO, which is that P-Groove characters can now cancel specials into supers. I find it a bit odd that this isn't a thing normally in CVS2, but it does improve the punish damage potential for that particular groove, making one of the biggest reasons to choose it in the first place all the more alluring. These buffs don't really matter that much in the grand scheme of CVS2's competitive scene, since the original arcade version is usually still chosen over EO in tournament anyway, but it is still neat. So, it's come to this. You know, for most of these videos, I like to highlight the strengths of a low tier, as well as their weaknesses, just because sometimes I feel like the former gets overshadowed by the latter. A character being stuck in D or F tier when someone posts a tier list may give someone the idea that character isn't worth playing, and that's not always true. not always true. There are characters that are at the bottom of tier lists and unfortunately don't have much in the way of redeeming qualities to make up for whatever issues may cause them to be on the weaker side. Can't delay it any longer, I guess. Let's talk about Roll. Roll in Marvel 2 is precisely the kind of character where you take one glance and you just know where she stands in the meta. She's generally considered bottom 1 in this 56 character roster, which is certainly an achievement in some form. Marvel 2's meta is real interesting. You're probably aware that the top level play in this game tends to revolve around a fairly small group of characters who outshine the majority of the roster. Thing is, many of Marvel 2's mid and low tiers still have merit to them, and even in the face of oppressive god and top tiers, they can shine in their own way, even if they aren't as dominant. It might be a god-like neutral tool, or a really belligerent button, maybe it's strong mix. Mid and low tier Marvel 2 exists as something of a separate meta for the game, which I think is really cool and part of why this game's team building is so interesting, because even with characters who aren't considered that great, you can still create cohesive teams that work extremely well. Roll has approximately none of the tools to contribute to any kind of successful team. This character is horrendous, and in just about every way you can imagine. She just doesn't do anything. First off, her range. Roll has stubby buttons with extremely poor reach. Roll actually has a rather uncommon strength in this game. She's one of only a handful of characters with a one-frame button, the fastest in the game. You have to appreciate the mind-bending insanity of Roll sharing a strength with Magneto of all characters, but don't let that fool you into thinking Roll can actually take advantage of it like he does. Her range being so bad, combined with her limited movement, means her neutral is not great. She does have a double jump, which is nice, but compared to other characters with tri-jumps and air dashes, it's actually a pretty limited movement tool, especially considering the utter lack of range on her normals. The best you're typically going to get from this is spamming buttons high up in the air to build meter. Roll has a decent amount of projectiles, but none of them are very good. A consistent issue with most of her specials is that they just take a very long time to start up. Another consistent issue with her specials is that they do horrible damage. Rollbuster fires a large projectile, and you'd think this would be a capable zoning tool, but it just has too lengthy startup and recovery to be decent in that area. There are comparisons to be drawn here with another character, Mega Man. Roll was designed in Marvel vs. Capcom 1 with Mega Man's moveset as something of a base. However, Mega Man's Buster is a normal, it's his heavy punch, and it's also much faster. You can fire them out at a pace that actually makes it a decent keep-away tool, with better damage too. Mega Man can charge his Buster shot, and even the uncharged shot does more damage than Rollbuster does. Her other projectiles like the Flower Bomb and Rock Ball have similar problems. Rock Ball is one of 3 specials that Roll and Mega Man can use, and it's not bad at first glance. It bounces around the screen in a way that's really intrusive to the opponent's movement, but it's just not rewarding to actually hit with. Her supers are similar to Mega Man's as well, identical in fact, but like the specials they share, Roll's are worse in just about every way. She has a full screen projectile super, but it's also pretty slow and does low damage to boot. It also does no chip damage for some reason. Beat Plane and Rush Drill don't fare much better. They both continue the trend of being slow, which means by the time the Super Flash starts up, the opponent can just block it on reaction. Beat Plane at least lets her move around the screen a little bit faster than normal, but once it ends, she's gonna eat a big punish for her efforts. These supers aren't even all that useful with Mega Man, only Mega Man actually has decent tools to make up for it. Roll's kit is bad, and it stands out even in comparison to the other bottom tiers. Like, okay, her, Dan, and Servbot make up a typical bottom 3 for this game that you see on many tier lists. Dan and Servbot are pretty bad too, but Servbot has a fast instant overhead and a full screen super that does genuinely good chip damage, and Dan's Dan kicks are actually a pretty kick-ass movement tool that makes him annoying to pin down. Roll has nothing that compares to those tools, and it doesn't even end there. She has poor combo damage, and her hit confirms aren't any better, her assists are whack, her throw isn't terrible, but she's never going to get close enough to land it. To really seal the deal, Roll has the highest damage modifier in the game, which effectively means she takes more damage than any other character who doesn't have the same defensive rating. For a low damage character, this really only serves to turn the gap between how much damage she does and how much damage everyone else does to her into a canyon. All she really has is just being annoying. Like I said, most of the low and mid tiers in Marvel 2 have something they can bring to the table, or some niche to fill, but even considering the possibility of using her as a tiny character to annoy the opponent and build meter with or whatever, Servbot fills that role slightly better, with a more robust game plan to boot. You can pair her up with a cracked assist like Tron Projectile, but is it really worth the effort? Low tiers can do amazing things, even in the worst of matchups, and I always love seeing that. Even the characters and groove I've talked about in this video have attained some incredible results. In Marvel 2, the odds are already stacked against the low tiers, but many of them have dedicated players who know how to make their strengths shine even against the strongest characters this game has to offer. Roll doesn't really have anything to flaunt or abuse. The best she's really good for is a laugh, which I guess is something. It's honestly a bit of a shame because not only is she the worst character in the game, she's also just a shittier version of an already existing character. Ah well, at least we got Tatsunoko vs Capcom for a game where she's both usable and actually pretty cool to boot. And that's it. 4 low tiers, 3 characters, and 1 groove just for flavor. I already explained why I really love talking about low tiers in the beginning, so I won't waste all your time with that, but looking back on the 20 plus characters I've talked about in both the low tier and top tier videos really does give me something to appreciate about the wide spectrum of character viability. Discussing a character that literally warps the game there and around them in one video, and then one who's so goddamn bad they might as well not be selectable, is the kind of stuff that makes me love doing this. Might be a while until I do another video like this, but we'll see. Until then, thanks for watching, have a great night, and take care. Hey everyone, I want to start off first and foremost by saying I'm really sorry this video took so long. I wanted to get it done a lot earlier, but that clearly did not end up working out. Very strenuous process, I guess, and it doesn't help that I've been dealing with some health issues. It's nothing major, but it is causing me discomfort for sure. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. So at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to get these videos done. So, you know, again, sorry about how long this took, but hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the top tiers video too. It was nostalgic, honestly, to go back to these videos and even to redo the ones that I did back in 2023. Anyway, I want to thank my channel members today, as I usually do at the end of these videos, because they're all amazing and wonderful, and I love them. So thank you to Old Man Han, Cammy the Killer, Jazba, Mortis, Arg Seals, Wormy, Perfect Orange, Happy the Hap Hap, Gundog92, Loose Chujin, Raymond ZX200, Nick Toyo, Basewire, Power Level Asian, Kira the Stowaway, Sonic Frontiers is a Good Game, Isaac the Collector, Chandaran, Professor Bagel, and Slurpee. Thank you all so much for the support. It really does mean the world to me. Don't have much to say other than thank you again for being so patient with my incredibly slow upload rate. Gonna try to have more stuff up before Combo Breaker, so you know, please look out for that, and thank you for supporting the channel. I love you all. Thank you. Bye. Have a great night.